Our Citizens Redistricting Commission was born from voter demand for fairness and transparency. While drawing our current maps, the commission held hundreds of public meetings, reviewed tens of thousands of comments, and drew maps that reflect people and communities, not politicians and their preferences. That's not just good governance, it's a model for the nation. Some point to Texas as a justification for this proposal, but California doesn't follow. We lead. We don't mirror dysfunction, we set the standard. Former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger called gerrymandering the cancer of politics. He championed the commission because he believed in a system that puts voters first. That belief still matters. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Lowenthal, you're recognized from the Majority Leader's desk.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I love you, Dad. I've been deeply torn by the national redistricting debate that has engulfed California. Beyond its vastly consequential political implications, this issue has been profoundly impacted me personally, because indelibly seared in my consciousness is the memory of my father working tirelessly over decades to create the independent redistricting system about which we now debate. By way of background, my dad, a community psychologist, was elected to the California State Assembly in 1998. He ran for public office with the principal goals of restoring public trust in political institutions and ensuring that elected officials listen to their constituents. To effectuate those ideals, he believed that the independent redistricting system was necessary. So in 2002, on this very floor, he introduced a constitutional amendment, AC1N, to create an independent redistricting commission. But his attempt received no support, and it died. Undeterred, he reintroduced the independent redistricting commission concept once again in the Assembly, but that effort too failed. And then in 2006, as a state senator, he reintroduced the concept as SCA3, and for the first time ever, the concept of independent redistricting passed one of our bicameral bodies. However, as described by Common Cause, quote, somewhere in the 1-minute walk from the Senate clerk's office to the Assembly clerk's office, SCA3 was lost for just long enough to miss key deadlines to keep the bill alive. The SCA's failure was devastating, but my dad's unwavering effort paved the way for the electorate to adopt an independent redistricting commission 2 years later. But his work did not end there. Upon going to Congress in 2012, the first piece of legislation he introduced was H.R. 2978, the Let the People Draw the Lines Act. This legislation would have required that all states establish independent redistricting commissions. Tragically, the legislation was met by political headwinds and died. But despite that, my dad pressed forward on his quixotic request to establish reform on a national level because he knew that a system in which some states had districts drawn independently and others don't was fundamentally unfair. Because Congress refused to hold a vote on his measures, he commenced advocating for reform in the courts. In 2015, he led an amicus brief in support of Arizona's right to form an independent commission. And then in 2017, he led an amicus brief in Gill versus Whitford, which he asked the Supreme Court to declare political gerrymandering to be unconstitutional. Although the court did not do so, Justice Kagan, in an opinion by Justices Ginsburg, Breyer, and Sotomayor, cited my dad's brief, writing, "The congressional brief describes a cascade of negative results from excessive partisan gerrymandering, indifference to swing voters and their views, extreme political positioning designated to placate the party's base and fend off primary challengers, the devaluing of negotiation and compromise, and the impossibility of reaching pragmatic bipartisan solutions of the nation's problems." I vigorously agree with the evils of gerrymandering described in my dad's brief and cited by Justice Kagan. That notwithstanding, because Texas has now shamelessly affected the national balance of power, our nation's democracy is faced with the exigency of existential dimensions. If unaddressed, Texas actions which occurred without the vote of its populace will disenfranchise Californians. And we must not allow Californians' voices to be silenced. It is imperative that Californians have a voice in selecting the political party that controls Congress in 2026. The most fundamental concept in our democracy upon which the collective value system is predicated is fairness. When Californians vote in 2026, our votes must be made on a level playing field. This constitutional amendment ensures that we have that balanced field. We must all continue to press Congress to create a national system that eliminates unconstrained political redistricting. But until that occurs, fair representation for Californians cannot exist without this measure. So today, I proudly join with my father, the architect of this commission, in urging its temporary suspension. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on AC8.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Quirk Silva, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I also stand in support of ACA 8. Colleagues, we are living through a dramatic and historic moment, a moment to stand up for our democracy, one that will shape our future for generations. Across the country, we have witnessed efforts to manipulate district lines, not to represent people, but to cling to power, to silence communities, and to steal representation. We saw this in Georgia, where 3 congressional seats were taken midterm through redistricting. We see it again in Texas, where 5 seats were carved out at the request of President Trump, all without giving voters a voice. But here in California, we have chosen a different path. Not to steal, not to rig, not to silence. We have chosen to let the people decide, to let them vote on the California maps. The California redistricting plan is about fairness. It's about trust. So when critics cry power grab, let us be clear. The plan is not a power grab. It is a power return, returning power back to the citizens of California. We did not start this fight. We did not force this issue. It was forced upon us by a president who has threatened, cheated, and tried to steal congressional seats to cling to power. Do not waste your breath scolding those of us who refuse to roll over for partisan maps that divide our communities. A bully, and yes, our president acts as one, uses power to intimidate, to harm, and to cheat. He has shown a pattern of refusing to accept the results of free and fair elections. In 2020, he falsely claimed victory. When he does not get what he wants, he shouts, he insults, and lashes out like a spoiled child. If you claim to care about justice and fairness, then answer this. Where's your outrage when states silence voters by carving up districts for partisan gain? Where is your outrage when working families, seniors, veterans, and marginalized communities are pushed to the sidelines, as they will be with the president's new executive order just this week to prohibit mail-in ballots? My colleague from San Diego says actions speak louder than words. On this point, we agree. California's action is clear. We are showing the nation how to rise above partisan bickering and to stand for democracy. We are showing that the people, not the politicians, should choose their representatives. We will not stand idly by as a bully screams and threatens. We will fight every step of the way to protect our democracy. Why? Because this is what our nation was founded on. History will remember that when democracy was tested, California chose fairness, transparency, and the people's voice. You can whine and complain, or you can stand with democracy, but you cannot do both. As President Lincoln reminded,
Aye, Gonzalez. Aye, Grayson. Aye, Grove. No, Hurtado. Aye. Jones. No. Laird. Aye. Limon. Aye. McGuire. Aye. McNerney. Aye. Menjivar. Aye. Nilo. No. Ochoa Bog. No. Padilla. Aye. Perez. Aye. Reyes. Aye. Richardson. Aye. Rubio. Aye. Ciarto. No. Smallwood Cuevas. Aye. Stern. Aye. Strickland. No. Umberg. Aye. Valadares. No. Wahab. Aye. Weber Pearson. Aye. Wiener. Aye.
Ayes 30, noes 9. The rules are suspended. Senator Gonzalez, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Madam President. There is a resolution at the desk requesting that Joint Rule 10.5 be suspended as it relates to Assembly Constitutional Amendment 8.
Secretary, can you please read the resolution?
Resolved that Joint Rule 10.5 be dispensed with.
This is also non-debatable. Senator Ciarto, you are recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a substitute motion that ACA 8, because of its costs, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations for a full hearing and vote, since it was not done before.
Senator, I apologize, but your motion is not in order. It does need to be approved by the Rules Committee.
I wish to appeal that ruling. It should be.
We will now vote to appeal the ruling of the chair. I put the question to the body. Shall the ruling of the chair be upheld? Secretary, please read. Call the roll. Senator Ciarto is asking for a no vote. I am asking for an aye vote.
Allen. Aye. Alvarado Gil. Archuleta. Aye. Adeguin. Aye. Ashby. Aye. Becker. Aye. Blakespear. Aye. Cabaldon. Caballero. Aye. Cervantes. Aye. Choi. No. Cortese. Aye. Daly. No. Durazo. Aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Grayson. Aye. Grove. No. Hurtado. Aye. Jones. No. Laird. Aye. Limon. Aye. McGuire. Aye. McNerney. Aye. Menjivar. Aye. Nilo. No. Ochoa Bog. No. Padilla. Aye. Perez. Aye. Reyes. Aye. Richardson. Aye. Rubio. Aye. Ciarto. No. Smallwood Cuevas. Aye. Stern. Aye. Strickland. No. Umberg. Aye. Valadares. No. Wahab. Aye. Weber Pearson. Aye. Wiener. Aye.
Secretary, please call the absent members.
Alvarado Gil. Cabaldon. Aye.
Ayes 30, noes 9. The ruling stands. We'll go back to the motion that was made by Senator Gonzalez. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Alvarado Gil. Archuleta. Aye. Adeguin. Aye. Ashby. Aye. Becker. Aye. Blakespear. Aye. Cabaldon. Aye. Caballero. Aye. Cervantes. Aye. Choi. No. Cortese. Aye. Daly. No. Durazo. Aye. Gonzalez. Aye. Grayson. Aye. Grove. No. Hurtado. Aye. Jones. Laird. Aye. Limon. Aye. McGuire. Aye. McNerney. Aye. Menjivar. Aye. Nilo. No. Ochoa Bog. No. Padilla. Aye. Perez. Aye. Reyes. Aye. Richardson. Aye. Rubio. Aye. Ciarto. No. Smallwood Cuevas. Aye. Stern. Aye. Strickland. No. Umberg. Aye. Valadares. No. Wahab. Aye. Weber Pearson. Aye. Wiener. Aye.
Ayes.
Jones, no.
Ayes 30, noes 9. Joint rules are suspended. Senator Valladares, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. I move to remove AB 1214 from the consent file at the request of the author.
The desk will note. Not seeing any other members wishing to remove anything from the consent file, we will now move to consideration of the daily file. We will begin with second reading file. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 482 with amendments, 1255 with amendments, 1003 with amendments, 696 with amendments.
Second reading will be deemed read. We will now move to Assembly third reading. File item 226, AB 604 by Senator Gonzalez. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 604 by Assemblymember Aguilar Curry, and Act relating to redistricting and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Senator Gonzalez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam President and Senators. I rise today as a proud joint author to present AB 604, which is a reasonable and rational response to the anti-democratic actions of the Republican Party as they attempt to rig our congressional elections. AB 604 contains the census block data that will define the temporary congressional districts that we are being forced to adopt through the actions of the president and his complicit party leaders. Just yesterday, the Texas House passed an aggressively partisan map giving President Trump the gerrymander he requested to produce 5 new Republican seats in the U.S. House next year. These undemocratic actions are a betrayal to the values of our great nation and to the people we all swore to represent, defend, and protect. Unlike Texas's actions, the decision to approve the temporary maps outlined in this bill will ultimately be in the hands of California voters. This bill gives voters a choice to keep the current districts or adopt maps to counter the actions of MAGA extremists in Texas who are obediently working to tip the scales for President Trump. Despite the minority party's hypocrisy and their attempts to confuse the narrative with sound bites and tweets, the truth is clear, that the maps are based on the work, comments, and hearings of the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, which is a bipartisan commission. In hearings over the last few days, I was actually very shocked to learn of the minority party's well-timed epiphany that independent redistricting commissions are actually beneficial to voters and democracy. Well, what do you know? This timely awakening of the Republican Party is actually very surprising, given that members of the party have voted against redistricting bills and reform bills for independent redistricting on at least 30 different occasions over the last 14 years in this state. I'm hopeful that my colleagues across the aisle will use their newfound enthusiasm for redistricting reform to reach out to their colleagues and to the president in DC. If you have his number in your phone book, please call him and demand that they adopt these commissions nationwide and stop the president's illegal gerrymandering efforts so we can shelve the bill and get back to serving our constituents and the daily needs that they have. As this body is now on the same page on the value of the Independent Redistricting Commission, I think it's important to highlight how the temporary maps described in this bill are grounded in the Commission's work. The adjustments in the maps are as follows. Again, they were supported by maps and testimony submitted by the public, commissioner testimony, and draft or completed commission maps. They also include 8 districts that will be identical to the lines drawn by the commission. And as I mentioned over and over again in committee, over 76% of Californians will actually be in their same congressional district. 58% of the maps in this bill are changed by less than 20%, and 37% are changed by less than 10%. The Redistricting Commission that completed the work and was rooted and the maps that are rooted in this work was comprised of 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 4 no-party preference individuals who did the hard work to create over 76% of the maps you see in this bill, demonstrating the real independence and nonpartisanship that informed the original maps and guided these temporary maps. Members, the greatest consequence for us today is inaction. Today, the decks are stacked against us, so what we have to do is fight back. We know that right now, President Trump is gutting vital programs and increasing economic uncertainty and chaos to some of our most vulnerable Californians. Medicaid cut $1 trillion over the next decade, with California at risk of losing $28 billion in federal funding. That puts 3.4 million Californians at risk. 3.1 families will lose SNAP food assistance benefits, mostly children. Billions will be cut from classrooms and institutes of higher learning. UCLA is being ransomed by President Trump now for $1 billion. This is what we're talking about here. California stands to lose so much more. Over $7.8 billion in lost tax revenue due to the Trump tax tariffs. And the list goes on, and our communities absolutely deserve better. What do we do? Just sit back and do nothing? Or do we fight back and provide some chance for our Californians to see themselves in this democracy? And while the minority party will continue to misdirect and misinform the public today with dramatic ties and cries about transparency, process, and rush timelines, the truth is that they hold the power to stop all of this. It's very clear. You all hold the power to stop this today. And again, actions do have consequences. And if the Republican Party truly wanted to stop these temporary maps, again, you have the power to do so. And by voting against this today, that means you are unwilling to stand up against a dictator, a leader that has taken so much from our most vulnerable constituents, regardless if they live in Republican or Democratic districts. Again, I will close by sharing that AB 604 is a temporary solution that provides California voters with the final say so that we don't tip the scales and allow this unchecked power to continue. This is how we fight back and protect our democracy. I respectfully request an aye vote on this bill.
Thank you. Senator Blakespear, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam President. Members, we could debate many details here today, but here's the bottom line. Republicans are trying to cheat to win congressional midterm elections under their unpopular president. And